On today's episode of the What Is Up podcast, we're gonna try something a little different. You see, Bubba loves movies, specifically one movie he refuses to shut up about, and consequently, his whole family's seen it too. The Blind, the true story of the early days of Phil and Kay Robertson before Duck Dynasty ever began. So, get your popcorn ready, sit back and relax as Bubba, along with his family and friends, discuss their take on what he believes to be one of the most powerful movies ever made. And here he is, Bubba Seaman.
Yes, I do love movies. And Rad, my intro guy, he was absolutely correct in saying that I have not shut up about The Blind. Ever since I heard they were making this film, I knew it was going to be big. I knew it was going to be powerful, and I definitely wanted to promote it. My goodness, they should be sending me some kickbacks for that, because I've promoted this movie since the beginning. So I knew it was going to be powerful, and it did. It really hit me right in the heart. And I know I'm not the only one. You guys remember my first guest from episode 1, Ryan Peterson? Yeah, he and his wife Mary went and saw it on opening night, and he told me even he got choked up watching it. So instead of just my take on the movie The Blind, I'm going to give you the Petersons' take, and our good friend Earl Canfield, he sent me his review as well. But first, we're going to get to see what my special guests thought of it. I'm joined in the studio today by 3 of my kids: my oldest daughter, Bridget, my younger son, JJ, and my youngest daughter, Grace. So this is not going to be your typical What Is Up episode. This is strictly a movie review of The Blind. If you aren't familiar with it, this is the story of Phil and Kay Robertson before Duck Dynasty, before Duck Commander. Everybody loved Duck Dynasty. This is what the Robertson family calls BC. This is Phil before Christ. And he was, he was a rough guy. It was not, the Lord was definitely not involved in their life at all. And you'd never know that by having watched Duck Dynasty. So if you're totally unfamiliar with it, it is one powerful movie. So we're going to see what these kids thought of it, and we're just going to kind of break down our opinions of it, and hopefully it encourages you to maybe go check it out. So what did you guys think of the movie overall?
I really enjoyed the movie. None of it was really a shock to me because I had known Phil's story from hearing them talk about it. So none of it was surprising to me, but I thought the way they put it all together, they just did a great job, and they didn't leave anything out, even the hard stuff that Phil was embarrassed to see in there. So I really appreciated that about it, and I just thought it was really good.
Right, and remember, this was not a Hollywood film. Hollywood said no. 2 different Hollywood companies said no, it's too controversial. Now, that's a challenge. I want you guys to go see this movie. If my audience, I want you to go tell me what was too controversial about this film. So they had to produce it themselves. Tread Lively was the name of the company, and they did a very good job for not being a Hollywood production company. Grace, what did you think of it?
I thought it was a good movie. I had always seen Duck Dynasty growing up, and that was one of my favorite shows to watch. So I thought seeing and watching the movie was another cool thing to see.
Cool. Okay.
I thought that the movie did a pretty good job telling the story of Phil. I think the actor really tried his best at portraying Phil in his early life.
Yeah. So Phil was asked at one point, they did a little limited run podcast just about The Blind. It's 8 episodes or something like that with just family members. And at one point, they were trying to talk about the actors and how good a job they did, because most of the actors, or at least the 2 main ones that played Phil and Kay when they were adults, they were British. So they had British accents. So they have to not only get rid of that, speak English, but then try and speak with a southern drawl or, whatever. And so that's why their voices sound a little different. Some of them sounded really good. And at one point, somebody asked Phil in this little limited run podcast, what'd you think of the guy who played you, Phil? And Phil's response was, not much. And everyone laughed because Phil didn't mean not much, I didn't think the guy did a good job. He meant it wasn't enjoyable for him to see somebody portraying all the bad stuff he had done. That wasn't fun for Phil. But Phil said if it can reach one person, if one person will give Jesus a look because of this, then it's worth it. But it was, he said, super embarrassing for him to remember and relive all that stuff. So, was it what you thought it was going to be? Obviously, you guys heard me promote it. Everyone who follows a podcast, like Rad said, I wouldn't shut up about it. Was it what I built it up to be, or what you know what I mean? Was it what you thought it was going to be?
I would say it was mostly what I had expected. I mean, I think you could tell that it wasn't made with as big of a budget.
Mm-hmm.
But they did a great job with what they had. And I don't know. Like I said, I just appreciate how accurate it was. So, yeah.
I did, like, kind of think, like, that's what it was, like, gonna be, like, about and, like, what had happened. But there was definitely a couple things that I was like, oh, I didn't know, like, that was part of the, like, his story.
Okay. Was it what you thought it was going to be, James, or was it
I
not?
was really surprised that they didn't water the movie down at all, and they really just did show every bad thing that Phil did in that time.
Yeah, that's what makes it powerful. The main thing for me, I guess, was that it did not. Obviously, we've watched every Christian movie, and in the beginning of Christian movies, they were cheesy, they were low budget. They didn't. The message was always good. But did this come off as a Christian movie to you guys? It didn't to me. It was like a drama. It was a story. It was a redemption story. This was not, you know what I mean? It was not your typical Christian movie. There's going to be lots of people that would be interested and entertained by this movie as long as they knew, as long as they weren't told this is a Christian movie, because it just doesn't come off that way. It's like you said, James, they showed all of Phil's struggles. And to me, that's what was going to reach people, that there's so many parts of that people are going to relate to. You guys can't relate to it too much, but most of the world can relate to alcohol problems, marriage problems, violence. Most of the people listening to this podcast are saying, yes, I saw some of that, I've experienced some of that, or I grew up in that, or, I'm struggling with that right now. Most of the world can relate to a lot of the struggles that were in this movie. And that's what, would make people want to go see it and see, well, my goodness, look at that family now. What happened? What changed? And we know the answer, it's Jesus. So, what do you guys think was the main message from the movie?
Well, I think that the main message was just that no matter what you've done or what's been done to you, anything, that Jesus can redeem you and make you new if you just let him. That no one is too far gone.
Absolutely.
And it just kind of reminds me of even Paul in the Bible, who is Ryan's favorite person, second to Jesus in the Bible, of how terrible he was. He hated Christians, killed Christians, but look at how God used him. Mm-hmm. And I think he did something very similar with Phil, but just in a more modern way, I guess.
Right. That's funny you make that correlation, because that was part of it. Phil's sister, Jan, told that pastor repeatedly, if you can reach him, he'll bring thousands. She just knew Phil was like a natural born leader. People gravitated towards him. If you could get him, he'll bring thousands. And is that not what happened? That's what Phil does every day to this day. He's all from that moment on, from BC, before Christ, they always had people in their house. They always had, guests. They were always trying to reach people with the gospel. So Jan definitely got it right.
Bridget pretty much said exactly what I was going to say as well about the movie.
That, nobody's too far gone.
Yeah.
Jesus can change any circumstance. Yeah. Okay. All right. Did it have an impact on you? We're a couple, what was that, September 28th? I think we went and saw it on the 30th, so we're a couple weeks past having seen it. Did it have an impact on you, or was it just a good, encouraging movie?
I would say that I couldn't really relate to it as much as I know you did, just because of the difference in the way that we grew up and the choices that we made. But I guess the part that stood out to me more, even though I know it's Phil's story and his kind of road to redemption, but Kay is the person, I guess, who stood out to me in that. And just the fact that she knew when it was time for her and her kids to physically leave for their safety, but she never left Phil. And I think it's because she knew that God could still reach him, and that Phil was familiar with who God was, but just kind of walked away from that.
Yeah.
And so just her example of faith and hope just stood out to me a lot.
And it should.
Yeah.
It should to a lot of women, whether they're in marriage or like you know, about to be married, or, you know, women who are in a tough marriage. Yeah, Kay probably comes out of that movie as like a beacon of hope of what it looks like to fight for your marriage.
Yeah. And the forgiveness part of it as well. I don't think that's something that a lot of people can do so easily, and it goes for us too. When we're wronged by someone, it's not easy to forgive them, but she forgave Phil, and that's a big part of the reason why they're all back together.
Right.
Because, you know, even if Phil did, you know, get saved and change his life around, if Kay didn't forgive him and try to make it work with him, they still wouldn't have what they have today.
Right.
So she was a pretty important part of that story too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it wasn't, they didn't do it like in a cheesy way. Like at the beginning, it doesn't say based on a true story. It says this is the true story. When you produce your own movie, you have complete control. And that was the cool thing about that is Kay didn't just, you know, she said, I'm done with, you know, promises. When, like, I'm not just going to let you back in. You got to prove it to me. You know, she fought for him, but she didn't. It wasn't just, oh, yes, now they live happily ever after. Like it was she's like, you got to show me. I'm not getting back in this situation until you show me that you've really surrendered and things are going to change. And that came across in the movie.
Yeah, she was just a really good example, I think, of what it looks like to live out your end of a biblical marriage too, which, like you said, like I'll be getting married next year, and so I think that's why it resonated with me a little bit more too.
Yep.
Just knowing that she's kind of a role model that I can look to. Hopefully, you know, we'll never end up in that situation.
Well, yeah.
But, you know.
But that's a good, encouraging example.
Yeah. So I just, that really stood out to me.
Yeah. Have an impact on you, Grace?
I mean, not really, because I can't relate to that situation, like, at all, in pretty much no way.
Yeah, I hope you're not thinking about marriage and all that just yet.
Yeah. But, like, overall, I love, like, the message that, like, it sent to everybody who, like, did need that encouraging message.
Right. Have an impact on you, James?
Not really, because I'm just not at that age yet. So it's not, the story doesn't really connect with me.
Okay. What'd you think of Phil's football playing days? Did you know he had played at Louisiana Tech and Terry Bradshaw I mean, yeah, of course you knew that, but
yeah, I knew he was gonna be a next big thing, but then just his love for hunting was outweighed it.
Yeah. He actually said that line, Phil always says it. I've heard it multiple times. He says, because what was it? It was like going into his junior or senior year, he decided to just walk away from it. Bradshaw was his backup, and he said, Bradshaw went for the Bucks, I went for the Ducks, and it worked out pretty good for both of us. You know what I mean? He had this multi-million-dollar duck call company, this huge family legacy, TV show, all that stuff, and Bradshaw ended up being a Hall of Fame quarterback. So imagine what Phil could have been. So, but he said it worked out good for both of them. So where does it rank? You know, I'm notorious for I can never narrow down my favorite movies. I kind of have like a top 5, top 3, top 10. Where does it rank in your guys' all-time favorite movies? Is it even in there? Is it up there? And you need to be honest. This is an honest place, so you don't have to have the same feeling about it as I do. But
it was a great movie, but it's not one of my favorite ones, I would say. And part of that, like I said too, is probably just because I can't relate to it as much. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I do think it's one that everyone should watch.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That's well said.
I'm like really a fan of comedy movies more. So, and this like isn't a comedy at all,
Nope.
really.
Nope.
So, like, I mean, I'd say it's a very good movie, but like in my opinion, there has to be like different like genres of movies. Like for comedy, I would rank that. But then for like serious movies, I'd rank that like top 5.
Kind of separately. Oh, top
Yeah.
5 serious movie for Grace. Okay. All right. This should be good. JJ, teenage
So,
boy.
I have a really mixed array of movies in my top 5. So number 1, undisputed, is Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Number 2 would have to go to Home Alone.
My goodness, you're actually giving me your top movies. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Number 3, which will probably be a huge shocker, would be Paul Blart Mall Cop.
That was almost me, by the way.
Mhm.
3 years, police science, Hawkeye Community College, right here.
And then number 4 would just be The Blind.
Okay, so it cracked your
Mhm.
top 5. All right. Nice.
Number 5 is it's just like everything else.
Okay. Go ahead, Bridget. If you kind of got some of your top movies, what are this? We'll deviate for a second here
Okay. Well, in no particular order. my
because everyone's
favorite-
dying to know the Seaman Kids top movies.
Yeah, in no order. Grown Ups. Another one, It's a Wonderful Life. Sound of Freedom is another one.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That everyone needs to see.
Absolutely.
Like I could not tell you to watch a movie more than this one. Yeah, it's not a fun one to watch, but
it's not your
I haven't-
popcorn movie.
We watched it 2-3 months ago,
Yeah.
if not before then, and I still think about it just about every day.
Yeah.
So
If you're not familiar with it, that's the story of Tim Ballard, a former Department of Homeland Security agent who just felt convicted to do more than just try and put away people that were in the child sex trafficking thing. He wanted to start getting these kids back home, and he ended up leaving his government job, and he made it his life's mission, and it still is today. He has his own foundation trying to get kids out of that, and it just exposes the horrors of child sex trafficking. It's not a fun movie to watch, but it was very well done and brings light to one of the worst issues we face today. So we all went and saw it as a family too. But don't get popcorn, don't get candy. Just watch it, and it'll stir your heart for sure.
I also really like Top Gun Maverick.
Okay.
But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Those are probably some of my favorites.
Okay.
Again, like I said earlier, I can't really like do the way they did. I can't like have a top favorite list, but like I will have to say like my favorite like theme of movies, I guess, is Christmas movies. You can't.
Oh,
beat 'em.
absolutely. Well, I mean, we're a Christmas family. We shine that time of
Yeah.
year. So, yeah, throw some Christmas honorable mentions in there before we get back to the movie review. We got to have some Christmas movies that we really like. Bridget mentioned It's a Wonderful Life. What's and you like comedy.
Yeah.
Do we have some favorites that merge the two?
Daddy's Home 2 is a really good movie.
Yeah.
The first one is okay, but definitely not as good as the second one, because the second one is just a lot more entertaining.
It is.
too.
And it's a Christmas one. First one's not. But, yeah. And the cool thing about that is, like, Mark Wahlberg recently, he's come out and he said, I think I'm done doing Hollywood movies. I think I'm only going to do, after he did Father Stew, he said, I think I'm going to do movies that have a message and a meaning and can encourage people and uplift people. And we'll see. And he's since left California as well. So maybe the Lord's doing something in Mark Wahlberg's life. I don't know. But when they came out on the Unashamed podcast and said, we're going to be doing a movie, it's called The Blind. I was like, The Blind? Well, that's going to be a play off of, Amazing Grace. I once was blind, but now I see. And so I knew that the whole time that's what that meant. And then you get to the movie and you realize it had a double meaning. Like, that is what it meant. Phil was blind to what he was doing. You know what I mean? He wanted to run with the devil, and that's what he was doing, and he didn't want to hear anything from anyone else. But when the movie opens, you realize he's talking to someone who asked, what has happened to you? And the movie is him retelling the story, and they're sitting in a duck blind. And so, yeah, that was something I really thought was like a subtle. I never thought that the movie was going to be about, the title was about a duck blind. I always thought it was about, that line from Amazing Grace. But that whole part was impressive because of who he's talking to, and I think we'll get to that in a little bit, who he's talking to in that duck blind. Was there anything you didn't like? This is a movie review. Is there something you didn't like? Or you thought, that didn't really hit me?
There really wasn't much that I didn't like. I feel like that's hard to just say you don't like something about a movie when it's true.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
I don't know. The Kay's accent got to me a little bit sometimes. It felt like it was a little dramatic almost.
Okay.
But that's just such a small thing that it doesn't matter in
Right.
the
Okay.
grand scheme of the whole movie. But besides that, I really don't have anything bad or negative to say about it.
Yeah, if you heard if you heard those actors talk, you'd be like, wow, how you pulled that off, I don't know. Because
I didn't know they were
thick,
British either.
yeah,
So that,
or English, whatever the proper word is. I don't
yeah.
know. But yeah, they
Yeah.
have thick accents. To sound from the South was impressive.
I wouldn't say I didn't really like anything about it, but something I didn't like to see was that there weren't a lot of people in the theater. There's a couple people, but
Yeah.
that's about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna be bigger.
Yeah, we went, opening weekend, we went Saturday, and what was there, maybe 20 people or so? Peterson said they went on Friday night, and he said it was probably about 40%, just less than half. The movie did do pretty well. It hit number 4 within the first 2 weeks, and I want to say it did like 10 million. I'm sure it's more than that now, but it's kind of like Sound of Freedom. If it had more time, if Taylor Swift didn't come to the theater and kind of take over things, it could have probably gained more and more steam and maybe had like a month long in the theaters because more and more people would go and see it. But 10 million for a movie that probably only cost a couple or a few to make, that's pretty good. So, anything you didn't like, JJ?
So, I don't really like this, but it's only because the movie did such a good job at it. It's the character of Big Al, because the performance his actor did really made me despise him through the whole movie.
Yeah.
Because he was the influence on Phil. He made him that drunken man.
Yeah.
It was just terrible.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Phil was in his 20s. He had his teaching degree, and yeah, he had this guy that hired him at the school and was a terrible influence on him. Yeah, that's no good. Okay. Was there anything in the movie that really got you thinking or feeling, or I mean, were you really thinking or feeling something about, as you watched it, or maybe towards the end? For me, it's funny you mentioned him, JJ. For me, it was Big Al Bolin. I had heard that story lots of times. I had heard, I had read Phil's original book, Happy, 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 which really details his whole life story and all that, and listening to their podcast, since episode 60. Yeah, I know who Big Al was, and I understand that when those guys came looking for Phil after he surrendered to Jesus, and he flat out told them, that guy you're looking for, he's dead. We buried him. He's not here anymore. Big Al ran off. That was it. So that whole scene where he's in the duck blind talking to Big Al, I knew what was going on. I knew that Big Al came back to him later in life because he was told, you got a heart problem. You could die tomorrow. You could die next week. You could die next month. And I knew this was it. He ends up seeking Phil out and asking Phil, what is up with Jesus? How did this happen to you? And how do I get in on that? Because I might not have any time left. And sure enough, he got saved. He accepted Jesus. 3 months later, he was gone. And it brings Phil to tears when he talks about it, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. We think everything's going to roll on like normal. We're going to get up and go to school, or we're going to get up and go to work. You're not promised anything. So if you're listening and you don't know what's going to happen to you, if tonight's your last night, I've shared the gospel as much as I could. I do on every single episode. I'm telling you right now, you can know for a fact that if you don't wake up tomorrow, you can know that you're going to be in the presence of the Lord. All you have to do is tell Jesus, I know I'm a sinner, and I believe that you died for my sin and rose again, and I want that forgiveness. That's the only way to get it. And Big Al knew that. And yeah, that really got me thinking, because I knew he was just about out of time, and he got in. He got in just in time. So for everybody else, don't cut it that close. If you want to know more, reach out to me. I'll tell you all about it. Okay, can you guys relate to anything in the movie? You've already pretty much said no, but was there any scene or anything that you really related to in the movie? I related to some, but you don't want my opinions right now. I want your opinions. How about, was there anything that surprised you when you saw something where you kind of like, I didn't expect to see that, or maybe I didn't know that, or probably not. I guess I'd probably told the whole story over and over again, and yeah. So
Maybe edit
You're going to have to edit those two last sentences out. Because you literally just answered your own question.
You just
Nobody
said
said anything.
no.
So
Yeah, maybe.
okay.
Cut.
the last
Okay.
Well, I had one. Was there anything in the movie that really got you thinking or feeling?
Okay.
Just raise your hand.
JJ, you got something that really got you thinking or feeling?
The moment where Phil took his sons out to hunt on Christmas after dismissing his friends. Because
Yeah.
in the theater, it kind of looks like he was going to go with his friends.
It did.
But then you got this mood change where he decides to wake up his kids.
Yeah.
And then he just takes them out to the wilderness after he told them he wasn't gonna.
Yeah. Because little Al had asked before, and he's like, you don't know nothing about that. You don't know nothing about these woods and this and that. And then, yeah, you think he's about to go off with his buddies. Because duck hunters got to get up super early, get out there in the dark, all that. Yeah. And then, yeah, he takes the boys.
Yeah, when I saw that, I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, no, Phil, don't go with them. But then when I saw him, like, walk up to his kids, I was like, wait, what's happening right here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Could they have done anything better in the movie? We kind of talked about how it was a lower budget. It was a, independent film. They did it themselves. Is there anything you think they could have done better?
Well, I'm not really a movie expert, so I don't know what they could have really done better.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this when we started, but I do think they did a really good job with the funds that they had.
Yeah.
So there's nothing specific I would say that they could have done better. Yeah.
Okay. You guys got anything? Think they could have done
I mean,
anything better?
I can kind of agree with her. Like, they did really good for what I had.
Yeah. Yeah. The more lower budget films you see or non-Hollywood films you see, and you kind of compare them against them, like, they did really well. The cameras were good. I said even down to that detail of when Phil kicks Kay out and she grabs the kids and they walk out of that trailer and it's pouring raining and she's cramming those kids into a VW Beetle. Like, that's all 100% accurate. The night he kicked them out, it was raining. And for a small-time independent film production company to do a rain scene that didn't just look like, some people holding their thumb over the garden hose, like that was extremely accurate. And I just knew that they had nailed it. Like, they couldn't have done any better on that scene. That was their story. They couldn't do it any better. Okay, so how did you guys feel immediately after watching the movie? Whether it was, Phil did his I Am Second thing at the end, which I Am Second is a super cool website. If you go there, there's lots of celebrities, athletes, actors, actresses, and they all talk about how they're second, how they have put their faith in Jesus. It's not about them. They want to just give God the glory. So Phil gave his I Am Second speech at the end of the film, if you stuck around for it. But how did you guys feel at the end of the movie?
I just felt very encouraged, especially when they brought it back to Big Al and just showed him being saved and then how he did pass not too long after. So that was just encouraging to know that this influential person in Phil's life, Phil got to kind of turn around and be a positive influence on him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just made me think about how many people they have reached.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, I don't know, that's our purpose here. And so it always brings me joy when I see our purpose being lived out by, us or other Christians. It's just good. But then another part of me does feel kind of burdened for the people who I know who aren't saved, because I know what their lives look like or could look like apart from Jesus. And so that's kind of tough, but it was just a really encouraging movie, and I walked out of there feeling good.
When I walked out of there, I felt like uplifted as well, like Bridget. But I was thinking, like, I was kind of like replaying the movie back in my head, just kind of like thinking about everything that happened and like how hard it must have been for everyone.
Yeah.
To like watch him like go back into that stuff. But like once he got saved, it just like felt like happy and like joy.
Yeah. It's, if you hear the kids talk about it or you hear Kay talk about it, I mean, that most people don't make it through that. Most marriages end. Most families are broken. You know what I mean? And imagine if that's how that ended. No Duck Commander company, no Duck Dynasty TV show. The impact that family and different family members have had in the adoption industry, and just all these different Christian ministries, Celebrate Recovery for drug addicts and things like none of that would ever have happened. There would be no Robertson family. It'd just be another broken family. That's it. So yeah, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I really felt motivated for when I will be an adult, maybe a father, but just not to end up how Phil was. Yeah. If you listen to some of the boys, like Jace and some of them, they're like, yeah, when they talk about those memories, Jace said that's what made him stay away from that, from alcohol. He said, I didn't want to be anything like my dad because I saw what he was like. So I made that choice. No, I'm not going to do it. That's it. So he never touched the stuff when he was young. So did you guys learn anything new from the movie? We think they're just entertainment, but probably not. Yeah, I didn't really learn anything. Okay.
I did.
Okay, wait, they had
okay, go ahead, guys.
Well, I had always like known that Phil like had done bad stuff, but I didn't know it was really like as deep as it was. I had known nothing about Big Al before this movie.
Right.
I just heard that Phil had been like a drunk, I guess, and like done really bad stuff and wasn't like kind or nice to Kay, but like that's about it. So watching the movie like actually showed me like the full picture of it.
Yeah, they said a season 2, I mean, we all know seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Duck Dynasty were probably the best. They said that season 2 season premiere where Phil and Kay renew their vows was like the most watched episode of unscripted reality TV of all time. And there's a line in there where Kay says, I knew you, I've been with you forever. I knew you when you were not so nice. You know what I mean? And that was just kind of on their Duck Dynasty TV show. Well, The Blind shows you what she meant by that. And it was very, very bad.
Yeah, the movie taught me, I learned from it that it wasn't all just Phil's fault. It was also a big influence from Big Al, was a huge part of what Phil became.
Yeah.
And that I thought Phil was really cleaned up his life before he had kids. I didn't know that directly happened when he was having his kids, and some of his kids definitely remember it.
Yeah, Al and Jace definitely remember it. Willie was still wet in the bed, but yeah, Al and Jace definitely remember it. So that brings me back to my point that I say on the podcast all the time, that the Bible gives the best answers and explanations for why we are the way we are and why the world is the way it is. The Bible tells us that bad company corrupts good morals. You can say, I want to be the good influence, but if you're constantly going to run around with people doing the bad stuff, that pull on you is tough. You can only resist for so long. You know what I mean? He had to go hide out in the woods them first couple of years after coming to Jesus because he knew that pull would be too much. So, yeah, definitely stay away from the bad influences unless you can be a good influence on them. Okay, how about, would you recommend this movie to a friend? Would you tell your friends to go see The Blind?
Yes, I definitely would recommend that they go see this. I think I had said that earlier, but yeah, it was just a great story of Phil's redemption. But yeah, even if you're not a Christian, you could still find it entertaining.
Yep.
And I would say there are probably several adults too that could relate to it and see or be able to relate to some of their experiences.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
you don't have to be a Christian to even go see it, but yeah, I would definitely say that it's worth watching.
Absolutely.
100%, because like it's one of those movies that sometimes it's hard to watch just because of the story and like how it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those movies that you should watch it.
True. Would you recommend to a friend, JJ?
Definitely, because I want to make sure people that I'm around in the future that their lives aren't like Phil's, but they aren't drunk, and that they're providing for the family they have.
Right. So what kind of, if we're thinking about other people, what kind of an impact do you, I mean, it's just a movie. Yeah, it's a true story, but it's just a movie. What kind of impact do you think it could have on other people or on people who go see it? I mean, can it have an impact? I mean, like I said at the beginning, I know that such a wide range of people can relate to this film as long as they don't look at it as a Christian film. You know, there could be people who like duck hunting or they respect Phil Robertson. They understand he is, you know, that line in the movie is not a joke. When he goes, Phil, you didn't call those ducks. You commanded those ducks. He is the Michael Jordan of duck hunting. So people might go see it just because of him, you know what I mean, in the duck hunting world. Some people might go see it because, you know, it's an independent film. Some people are just into independent films. Some people might go see it because they understand, oh, it's about, you know, struggling marriages or it's about alcohol abuse or whatever. So many people can relate to a different part of this film. I know it can have an impact on them. So how about this one? If there's a sequel, let's say they do a Blind Part 2 and they pick up kind of where it left off, you know, maybe building up to, you know, how Duck Commander got started. And spoiler, like that is how he got the idea for the first Duck Commander duck call. It was a Christmas toy of one of those boys, a little whistle where you pull that thing, and he saw that there was like a reed or a piece of plastic in there that when the air went over it, it made a whistle sound, and that's how he came up with the first duck call, which was more like a whistle, but he developed that reed system where those reeds would flap and sound more like all the different kinds of ducks. But let's say there's a part 2 that picks up at that point. Would you guys go see it?
Yes, I would definitely go and see it. Because I don't really know how he got from, I mean, you kind of just briefly described how the whole business got started, but I think it would be cool to see how it all worked, and after he got the idea, then what did he do with that, and just how it all progressed and became what it is today. I don't know. I think that stuff is pretty cool. So.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
If you were to see how he developed the idea, the patent that, you know, he was a smart dude. I mean, he was an master's in English. He had to get a patent for it. And then the way they did duck calls back in the early days, that was hard manual labor. It was not, you know, the way it looked on Duck Dynasty with all the plastic and formed pieces and just assembly and stuff like that. So it was, yeah, I would definitely go see it if there was a sequel. Grace?
Yes, 100% I would, because I feel like, I mean, it wouldn't be as interesting as the one now, but, like, it'd still be interesting enough to go and watch it, like, in theaters, and I feel like it'd be kind of cool to see, like, how it all worked out. Like, I mean, I know the ending, but, like, I feel like it'd be cool just to see, how hard they worked, I guess, for the company.
Yeah, how they built it up. It's an interesting story. It wasn't an overnight success. Like, I've listened to them explain a lot about it, and the duck hunting world kind of made fun of him at first, and he had to go to Walmart's himself and get them on the shelves at Walmart, and he ended up being like the number one, you know, trusted voice in all of duck hunting, and yet they laughed at him at the beginning. So
I know if they did, it probably wouldn't be as good as the first Blind, because now the whole story is different. And now instead of it being about family struggles, it's now just starting a business, which is also a struggle.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the redemption story. This would have to take on, like, how they launched Duck Commander. And what, because in the beginning, he wasn't doing duck calls. He was fishing the river. That's why they went down to the river. He was doing commercial fishing, and that's when he had the idea, to really start moving the duck call ahead. I think it'd be a good movie, but yeah, it wouldn't be a redemption story. It'd be the sequel. So, would you see it again? Is this the kind of movie that when it comes to streaming, or if you catch it on TV, or if your friends say, hey, I was thinking about renting it, you bugged me, you're just like Bubba, you didn't shut up about it, now I'm going to rent it. Would you watch it again? Could you watch it a second and a third time?
I would say that I definitely could. Is it one that I'd watch every day? Probably not.
Right.
I could watch Grown Ups every day. I have.
Yep. Yeah.
For a stretch of time. But yeah, I would definitely go and watch it with anyone to go. I said the same thing about Sound of Freedom when I was telling friends about it.
Mm-hmm.
That one wouldn't be as enjoyable to go and watch over and over.
Yeah.
But if it just got them to go see it, I'd be more than willing to do that because of the impact that movie had on me. So, yeah, for sure. If anyone wanted to see it, and I'm sure we'll buy the movie or it'll go to stream, something. Yeah. So we'll definitely see it again.
Okay.
If any of my friends had asked about it and wanted me to go with them, then I would. But if not, to be honest, I probably wouldn't watch it again, just because it was a good movie. But, I had heard about the story already.
Yeah, and you're, what, 12? 11.
Yeah.
You're 11, yeah.
So it's just not as interesting. It is really interesting, but, I don't know.
See, look at that. On the What Is Up podcast, you can be honest, and we don't get into fights. We don't got to start yelling names, because I think it's the most powerful movie I've ever seen. Grace says, I don't think I'd watch it again. It was good, but I don't think... See that? We can have differences of opinion. You're grounded.
I think definitely if I had a friend who wanted to watch it, I would definitely watch it with them, especially if they didn't really know about Duck Dynasty or the story of film before.
Yeah. Well, and it's just a good way, like I said, it's not a Christian movie, but you come away from that movie knowing the gospel, for sure. Something I didn't mention earlier, one thing I liked about it, I love when movies do this, true stories do this, at the end credits, when they show you real pictures next to, still shots from the movie, and they show you what the person really looked like and all that. I love that stuff. That's what makes true stories so great. I just love that stuff. So, like I said, I had a few people that went and saw it, a few friends, and they emailed me their opinions. So I'm just going to read to you what they said about the movie and see how it compares to me and my kids. The first one here that's going to be from Ryan and Mary Peterson. They said, here's what the Peterson family thought of the movie. Overall, we really liked the movie. We were very familiar with Phil and Kay's life, but it was nice to see it come to life. We appreciated Phil's vulnerability as he shared the shameful parts of his past and how through the grace of God he was able to transform his actions to better suit his family and follow the Word of God. One thing that surprised us was the amount of time that was spent in his bad years. We get it. We would have liked to have seen more of the impact of him changing his ways and how he followed the Word of God and how he infused that into his whole family's lives, including tough decisions they've made in their business that followed God and not the earthly ways. The most powerful part of the movie was after the movie concluded, Phil appeared with his Bible giving us a message. So that is what Ryan and Mary Peterson thought of it. Earl Canfield, he said, I thought the story was great and the movie was good. I really enjoyed it. It kept my attention throughout. I didn't really know what to think going into it other than it would be the life story of Phil Robertson's, and it totally met my expectations in that regard. The main message, he thought, was that God can redeem anyone who is willing to repent and let Jesus Christ change them. When asked, did it impact you in any way, he said it reminded him of his own sins and how grateful he is for God's salvation work in his own life. I asked Earl, where does it rank in your top movies of all time? And he goes, top 10 for sure. When asked, what did you like about it? He said, I liked how they used the narration from the actual duck blind to lead the audience through the story. It was very clever. Anything you didn't like, Earl said, There were a few times where it was hard to hear some of the things being said because of either the accent of the characters or the sound levels, but he said it was not a big deal. Was there any part that really got you thinking? Earl said, I really enjoyed seeing Phil reconnect with his boys out in the woods after he got saved. That was beautiful. Did you relate to anything specifically in the movie? Earl said, the ugliness of sin in my own life. They did a good job of bringing that to life. Let's see here. Could they have done something better in the movie? Earl said maybe a little better sound levels at times. And when asked how did you feel immediately after watching the movie, Earl said hopeful, realizing again that the power of Christ Jesus to change people. Did you learn anything new from the movie? And Earl said lots of things I never knew about the Robertsons. Lots of things I didn't know about duck hunting and duck calls. Would you recommend it to a friend? Earl says definitely. And what kind of impact could it have on others, and who would that be? Earl said it could be life-changing for anyone who is struggling with sin. Lots of people he can think of. And I said, if there's a sequel, would you go see it? Earl says yes. And would you see the movie again? Earl said yes. So that's just a few people. If your name isn't on that list, man, I don't know if it's still in theaters, but you have to check it out. Go find it. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. I will do a money-back guarantee. My opinion of the movie, minus what I've already told you, is that I can relate to the story a lot. No, I don't have a multi-million-dollar duck call company. I've never even been duck hunting. But I can relate to the story a lot. Obviously growing up in Louisiana, that's where, most of the movie took place. Most of their story took place. That's always been a connection I've had that I found it interesting. Living like an idiot in high school and after high school. Like, I totally relate to that. Those of you who know me, I was kind of a punk. But there came a point, where we came to a fork in the road, me and Sarah. And we chose right. And I've said this before, everything good I have right now, it would not exist if I had chose different right then at that moment. It's the same thing Phil chose. Everything good I've done, a lot of people think I've done a lot of good over the last, 20-some years since I've been a Christian. None of that would have ever happened if I had chose differently at that time. Jesus said it right. He goes, we must be born again. And the blind shows us that no one's too far gone. Don't ever lose hope on anybody. I invited multiple people to come see this movie with my family or at their own time, no cost to them, just so they could maybe see, the power of God. Maybe they don't want me to share Jesus with them, but they would go see a free movie and have some free popcorn or whatever, just so they could see the power of God to truly change someone's life. I know it can impact people. No one's too far gone. No situation is hopeless. If you're still breathing, there's still hope. So that's the kind of God we serve. Anything else that we didn't hit that you guys would want to cover before we wrap up the episode? Big thank you to my friends, Ryan, Mary, Earl, that emailed me their reviews, and my in-studio guests, Bridget, Grace, JJ. It was a fun episode. I want to thank everybody for the support. I even had an old friend from high school, John Westergreen, who said, I heard on the podcast you mentioned you wanted a bumper sticker that says vehicles suck. And that bumper sticker showed up in the mail the other day. So it's things like that that make me think, hey, I can keep this thing going for a few more episodes. But I want to see the numbers go up. I want to see more followers, more subscribers. I want to know that the message I'm putting out is benefiting people and that it's even mildly entertaining. So don't forget to share it wherever you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Subscribe to it, follow it, like it, share it, tell people all about it. If you want to be a guest sometime, send me an email at whatisuppodcast@gmail.com. I got to have more episodes coming up that people will want to hear. So if some of this stuff just doesn't make any sense to you at all, and you just think it's all a bunch of bull, and you're not going to go see The Blind, and you think Duck Dynasty sucked or whatever, but if something in you says, I want to know a little bit more, maybe it's not. What if you're wrong? Well, then reach out to me and I'll fill you in. It's not that complicated. The world's a messed up place. If you want answers, you're not going to find them down here. You got to look to God, and He'll show you what is up.